This is Lysha Holmes, and I'm your host on the Recruiters Recruitment podcast brought to you by Hoxo Media. And I'm so thrilled to bring to our channels today. This is Rhonda D'Ambrosio, who is the founder of Mental Health and Recruitment, of which I'm a champion and so proud to be part of it. Welcome to you today. How are you, Rhonda?
Hey, Lysha, I'm really pleased to be here. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. And for those who are joining us over on YouTube, Rhonda officially has the best backdrop in the whole of recruitment with her guitars. I think I've said that to you before. It's definitely worth going over and having a look just for that reason. Well, look, we wanted to record this episode as an extra special share really for our audience because it is Mental Awareness Week, Mental Health Awareness Week. And I think it's really important that people understand what they can do right now to get involved. So first of all, for those who for some reason don't know what it is, please explain what mental health and recruitment actually is and how it all came about.
Wow, thank you. Where do I start? Especially as I think one of my dogs was trying to get in on the live, as always happens.
Of course.
Yeah, absolutely. So mental health and recruitment is, I would say, the culmination of the last 8 years' work that I've done in the recruitment industry. So, I started out back in 1997 and as well as doing a number of different roles in the industry, I set up my own recruitment company in 2007 with my then business partner. And we had a very amicable work divorce back in 2013. And most people that know me know my story. My mum got a very late diagnosis of motor neurones disease. She was terminal within a few months, and then we lost her a couple of months after that. And it was that event that led me to diversify MIDA Technologies, as it was then, to MIDA Consultancy, because I took some time out, as you can imagine, to spend those last months with mum. And at that time, my business partner Deborah said to me, "Do you know what? I don't think I want to do recruitment anymore." I was like, okay. I'd kind of wanted like a very short-term break, and she had fallen out of love with it. It wasn't for her. The business had served us with having our children, who back then. And for me, going through what I did with mum and seeing how my mum's outward response to what was happening to her was just one of sheer courage and bravery. And I can say hand on heart, that was a really life-changing moment for me, because my mum had suffered with depression on and off throughout her life. But once she knew that she was, there was absolutely no coming back from MND. She didn't respond, I guess, in the way that I anticipated she would. You imagine people breaking down. You imagine maybe that's when the cloud of depression would set in, and that, absolute hopelessness. And my mum responded in a completely different way, which was to embrace the life that she had left, to enjoy what she could. I mean, if you know the disease, I've talked about it a few times this week, you're trapped in your own body, and mentally you're absolutely switched on. So she'd lost the ability to talk, she'd lost the ability to move, but she was able to, she had mental clarity. And that's one of the hardest things of
very
MND.
cruel. Very cruel.
Yeah, very, very cruel. And that piqued my interest in learning more about how our minds work and how actually we can influence our quality of thinking, and that in turn can influence our mental health. So Debs and I, as I said, very amicable work divorce, and I kind of retrained, and I decided to work with recruitment owners and people in the industry to improve their performance by way of improving their quality of thinking and getting a handle on the emotions, not rejecting their emotions, but kind of the term I used earlier this week was almost learning to swim in them. So rather than being afraid of falling into the water, it's actually being confident enough to go in and learn to swim. So, for me, that was the start of a journey where the industry perhaps wasn't embracing mental health and well-being. We were coined as being very, very resilient, that, now mental health is not an issue for us. And I was very fortunate to speak to somebody I'd worked with many, many years ago who'd just set up a business, we laugh about it now in 2021 after the pandemic, but he set up a fully remote recruitment organization. and was really interested in what I was doing, and told me about how this model that he'd created was going to really benefit people's mental health and well-being. And I said it absolutely would, especially, you know, giving families, working parents, flexibility. But I also said to him, there is a danger that when you take people that are used to being in a very, very social environment and put them into their own four walls, basically everything we've all dealt with in the last year, it can be very isolating and it can be very detrimental to the business.
Yeah.
And people, I think, we do understand it now, but going back to 2015-16, you know, this was for me something that I said you need to really be on top of, because the model's great, but not everybody's going to be able to flourish in this way. No. So he got me into his business, and, you know, I worked with his team, and he let me kind of use all my models, you know, my HPI framework, Titanic thinking, did my grounding here. And he was a massive champion for what I was doing. And fast forward a year and a half, it was, the word shock doesn't even cover it. It was devastating when he took his own life. He was the kind of person that you just wouldn't have expected it of. You know, he was a good talker. I felt he was always very, very open. One of those individuals where you're only seeing things at surface level. And I think for me, Lysha, at that point, it was, no, this is a problem. This is a real issue. You know, one, I believe mental health and well-being is a topic that every company should champion, regardless of what industry they're in. Agreed. Because we all hear this. We all have mental health. There should be no disparity between physical and mental health. But what this event kind of said to me was that there are thousands and thousands and thousands of people out there that are struggling, that are in positions of you know, responsibility, that have families, that have the world on their shoulders, or are hiding how they're feeling in the workplace, you know. And these are people that outwardly you would think they were very resilient. They might be top billers, they might be the highest performers. And this lesson sort of taught me that listen, nobody is immune to this. Absolutely. And I guess those two events, you know, what happened with my mum and the work that I'd done in the last 8 years, and then losing John, you know, that was the origins for mental health and recruitment. So that's a really long answer to your question. I know, but it contextualizes it. And I think that particularly, I mean, obviously, you know, I'm very fortunate. I don't know anybody that's got motor neuron disease, but I'm familiar with it. And I think it's one of the cruelest diseases out there. And, you know, you speak so compassionately about your mum and how brave she was and courageous. And, you know, people often use, don't know, that you know, people on the deathbed don't look back and say, you know, I regret not having more money. It's all the other components. So it, you know, that's very personal that you shared that. But the one that will resonate with our listener, which is recruitment, you know, professionals, aspiring leaders, and those running companies, is that, you know, nobody is immune to mental health being challenged. And particularly, and I know that this is why it's become so much more prominent over the last 15, 16 months, is that we have all been forced into this level of isolation, which human beings were never designed to be in. And I know that, you know, the sort of the whole remote model, I mean, I've worked remotely for 16 years, but I do agree with everything that you've said there. And I think that's where something had to change. And, you know, I consider myself resilient, but nobody's immune to having anxiety and to feeling depressed and to, you know, but for the grace of God, I haven't ever felt in a position where I don't want to be here anymore. But I think I learned myself, you know, speaking to probably people that you speak to, you know, recruitment leaders, they were feeling so isolated last year because they're having to, you know, steer this ship through the most horrendous storm that nobody really knew how long it was going to last for. Lockdown went, oh, we'll be all right by July, August. No one really knew. And they felt really abandoned, didn't know where to turn because they didn't want to show vulnerability to their teams because it's a sign of weakness. And I think that's where, for me, when I became aware of you, which I can't even remember how it was, but I thought I want to, you know, I'm in a very privileged position. I'm speaking to, you know, all these business owners, that's my job. And they're confiding in me and I don't know where to signpost them to. I don't know how to support them. But the fact that they're confiding in somebody, there has to be some way of getting involved. And that's why I was just absolutely thrilled to be part of it. So I think, you know, mental health and recruitment
is now fast forward to 2021. We knew it was a lot of hard work behind it. I don't think anyone thought you just came up with the idea last year, Rhonda. And there's, you've got real credibility with that. And I think that you've made it just normal to talk about it. That's the truth now. It gets talked about every day.
I hope so. I think, it was always, there are still individuals that have been in the industry a long time that probably question what we're doing and question the benefit to having an organisation like Mental Health and Recruitment around. But the reality is that the role and the way in which we do the role has changed considerably. And now I believe we have a duty of care for the next generation that's going to be coming in, and the expectations that our kids have got based on their learnings, based on, how society fits with things like their social media and everything else, is completely different to the world as it was 20 or 30 years ago, where in reality, we could switch off at the end of the day. We left the office, we didn't have mobile phones. If we had a system, we certainly weren't either able to access it due to technology, or were not allowed to access it because of the, So, our industry now is always on. And, I've got teenage daughters, you've got teenage daughters, and we see how social media and being always on impacts them. And I think actually it's not good enough to just say, if you can't do the job, if you can't deal with the stress, don't do it, because none of us are impervious to life. And it's not about people that can't do the job. It's about people that may be under additional pressure in other areas of their life. Yeah. So, you can't just choose to support a certain percentage of your workforce. You have to enable people and allow them to be able to bring their whole selves to work, because we no longer have a churn and burn culture, right? Many, many years ago, we would get people in, they would work hard for us. The shelf life in the average recruitment business was a few years, and they went off, you hired more in, and so on and so forth. But it's not just about doing the right thing and taking care of people. There is a business case to it. If we look after our people, they work harder for us, there's more discretionary effort at stake. And not only are we improving people's lives, but we are improving our own businesses. So I do think more and more people are coming to understand that now. And if I look back to the talks that I've done in the last 8 years, and I remember being in a room of 100 recruitment business owners or leaders, and I'd ask about mental health and policy and what do you do in your business, I'd be really lucky, Lysha, if 2 of them put their hand up. 2. Whereas now we're in a position that the feedback we get from Mental Health and Recruitment is fantastic. We've just launched the Awareness to Action campaign and put our pledge out there, as you know. And, what we're asking organisations and senior leadership teams to do is to, pledge to change how mental health is viewed, supported and talked about in the workplace. We've only been live maybe a week, and
it's going well. I think, and I do just want to say, for those who are listening, who, nodding away, quickly downloading the Awareness to Action, we want to get involved, but actually I want to talk, and we want to talk and reach out to those that are maybe, I don't want to say cynical, but are possibly still of the mindset that, there's this disconnect between, we're a burnout sector, times have changed. And I think the key thing that Rhonda's talked about there about your productivity and therefore profitability is you need to future-proof your business. Generation Z, which is we are parents of, and you're talking 16 to 24-year-olds, have constantly got these, right? And I know that they talk all the time, and it's about giving them the mindset of what they do to protect their mental well-being. And they do talk about it. It is so important to this next generation, this Generation Z. They are not interested in your beanbags, your Ibiza trips, your champagne. They are interested in what you're going to do to look after me. And that's why, please don't be cynical about what this means for your future proof. The people that you're going to bring in are going to be your future revenue providers. They want to know what you're doing to protect mental health. So I want to say that as someone that, we're providing the service to the same sector. It's so important that you listen and understand that it's everyone's responsibility. No one is immune from this. And we're creating good mental health culture. That's what we want. We want to talk about it. So talk to us then what, the pledge and this awareness to action, what exactly is it? What do people need to do to ensure it's not just a badge on their website? Because I'm really keen that people aren't just using it as a badge, and I know you are too.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess this ties into the survey that we did last year. Okay. Anybody that doesn't know, when we launched, mental health and recruitment formally, we felt that we had to address the cynical members of our industry, and that's absolutely right to do that. We can't just say this is how it is because I say it so. We went out and we surveyed across all levels of employees, whether they were business owners, leaders, back office, ops, salespeople, everybody. And we felt that we needed to do that to baseline what shape the industry was in, so that also we could not only help and support, but we could measure the impact that we were having. So, a big part of doing the survey was to use that as almost a launch pad for the Awareness to Action pledge, to get those businesses committed to moving away from awareness that we're all very, very good at, especially in mental health awareness weeks, but actually to more sustainable action. And you're absolutely right. It is not just a case of signing up on the website and saying, yeah, we're doing this, we're going to do it, and then being in our Hall of Fame. What happens is organizations sign up, they give us some information, they tell us how many members of staff they've got. And prior to us sending out our starter roadmap, what we do is we do an opening survey across the business. And that opening survey is completely confidential, but we ask questions that tie not only to the call to actions we highlighted in the survey, but also to the 6 components of the starter roadmap. So that once we've taken a company through this, once they've gone through what we're saying 6 months worth of the journey, if they're able to go through and to and they have to, Lysha, they have to evidence back to us what they've done, how they're doing it, how they're addressing each of the 6 components. We then do a closing survey. And that closing survey goes out to the same employees, and we have a minimum respondent rate that we need to see come back in. And we can then tangibly see the impact that following the pledge, completing the starter roadmap has had on that business. And that comes from their people. And I think by doing that, it's not just about saying, oh, hey, look, mental health and recruitment are driving this change in the industry. It is about businesses being able to proudly say, wow, look at what we've done.
Yeah.
Because
really,
it's not black and white, right? It is a grey area. So the idea is, as I say, that it's very, very tangible. There are measurements in place, and businesses do have to be very aware and be very comfortable with the fact that they have to evidence back to us what they've done. And even then, even when they've evidenced back to us, the results of the closing survey, which are again going to be anonymous, are what would define whether or not they get that second badge, that awareness to action badge.
I love it. I love the accountability aspect of it, because I think that's the critical part for me. That, so many people join bodies and, basically pay some kind of subscription to say they're part of something, which, is absolutely fine. I'm not judging you guys, but I think it's really important. It's like investing in people. You have to do so much to prove your worth. I think that's a really great way to clarify exactly what you're intending to do, and that this is not about the initiative of mental health and recruitment and your champions and your supporters and your ambassadors doing it. It's about actual business leaders and their employees and team members doing this, making mental health talked about and making it, we're changing it. You're changing.
Totally.
Love
but
it.
I think it's important to say that we've simplified it as much as we can. And the idea for us is that if businesses are finding it easy to achieve the starter roadmap, then the next element of what we'll do will be kind of, up in the ante somewhat. So, if you think about the Thriving at Work report that the government published back in 2017, if you look at the core standards that were recommended, that were a part of the Time to Change movement for kind of, broader corporate businesses, not just our industry, the core standards were great, but going through it was heavy going. If you're a small business, if you're an agile business, or if you've got very limited resources, I think that could be quite overwhelming. And that's why we stripped it back, looked at the call to actions from the survey and what came out there, and then built something that we knew was very unique but specific for our industry.
It's been incredible to watch your journey so far, and I'm sure that there'll be lots of people wanting to get in touch and find out what they can do. So we'll make sure when we share this podcast live that people can sort of click on that link and find out more what they can do about it. So if this is a recruitment leader listening, what can they do right now other than sign up to the pledge? What can they do right now? And then going forward, let's forecast into the sort of back end of this year. Is there anything else you think they should be doing right now to protect people's mental well-being?
I think, first of all, Lysha, business owners need to have a very honest conversation with themselves and a very honest look at their business, and I guess evaluate the culture that they have. And you could be a business that has an amazing environment, some fantastic people, but if you're talking about well-being and mental health, or even any kind of diversity, inclusion, anything like that, truly, what culture have you got? Is it psychologically safe, or are you only wanting people to present themselves in a certain way that maybe fits with the ethos of the company as you see it? So they have to do that. That's where they have to start. And they kind of, it's like most things, right? Unless you admit that there might be, doesn't have to be a problem, doesn't have to be an issue, but maybe admit that there are some basic changes that could happen. Then that, I think, is an amazing first step. So they need to think about it from that I guess that end, because what I've seen is many organizations, coming up with some really good initiatives, and we're going to do this and we're going to do that, and we'll get that person in, and we've got an EAP, but those things are the tick box exercise. And if you go back to, the survey and the statistic that came out of that, 1 in 4 employees felt that their employer was supporting mental health or driving mental health initiatives as a PR exercise or tick box exercise. You've got to mean it. So start there. And also, I think the other big piece of advice that I would give is, don't try to do anything too drastic. Don't try to drastically change the business that you've got. You're just looking to improve. You're looking to do, it's far better if you take a very small step forward that is also an authentic step forward. I think that means more people are stupid.
Yeah. They don't want disingenuous big grand gestures. They want something that's actually meaningful. And like you say, true to their business. What are your thoughts on, I did the mental health first aid course. What are your thoughts on business leaders doing that as a starting point? Do you think people need to do that?
I think there is huge value to doing any type of mental health first aid course, but I think you have to understand the outcome and the reasons that you're looking to do it. If you're looking for more awareness as a leader, but you're not necessarily comfortable with being the person in the business that your employees come to, that's absolutely fine. But unfortunately, in our industry, we have this kind of ingrained in us, this solve problems, fix the solutions, find a solution. Yes. Right, find a solution. And so mental health first aid in our industry, I think what typically happens, and not always, but I'm certainly conversations that I've had with individuals, is that they feel a pressure to fix somebody's problems. And I think that can then lead, can cause issues with regard to boundaries that you set for yourself and letting too much in, especially if you're an empathetic person. Or what happens is you're not engaging with your business in the right way. There's no point having mental health first aiders in your business if you're not looking at your culture and you're not trying to get it right on every level. It's still better than nothing, granted. But one of the reasons that we're launching our mental health first aid training and community is to actually support people in their jobs, in their roles, in our industry, to make sure that that they're okay. I think it was last year, I did a Women in Recruitment webinar, and I was talking about this, and one of the business owners said to me they'd had to move the person that was their mental health first aider onto a 4-day week because the level of almost the burnout that individual felt after a whole week of people. So it's almost like you have to understand what the role of mental health first aider is, and then you have to apply it in the right way in your business. So yes, great for awareness, but do it for the right reasons.
And do it with caution. Actually, be prepared for what it actually means. That if you, generally speaking, people that are interested in doing that role are probably the very empathetic ones that do want to be sort of the solution for those people's problems. And actually our role is a conduit to those people that will then help them solve those problems.
And absolutely that, and not the people that put their hand up because they do care about that stuff may not be the best suited people, or may need some additional support and training around setting those firm boundaries, because you only do so much of that in any of the mental health first aid courses.
You do, and I, I'm so pleased I've asked you that question, because I know we didn't discuss it offline first, but I think it's really important that, if you're considering having somebody in your business as a first aider, as you would with any medical first aid, you're not a medically trained person. You are just there to signpost. You're there to non-judgmentally listen and support. You're that first point, that assist model. I think that's really important that we've talked about that. So for you on a personal level, I mean, gosh, you must have yourself felt real pressure last year. You are a business owner, you are a parent of teenage girls like me. So let's not even go there with the homeschooling. We got them through it, let's face it. What would you say, if you were to look back and reflect, was your biggest learn over the last 12 months?
Such a hard question. I've had so many learns for lots of different reasons, but I think the most important one, which ties to what we're talking about today, and I think is really important, when you talk the talk, you've got to walk the walk. My biggest learn is I do have to say no sometimes. I can't do everything, and I can't be all things to all people. And Emma Dredge, I don't know if you know Emma, she's been part of the mental health and recruitment community. She and I had a conversation last year, and we were talking about different energy types. And through that conversation, I came to realize that I'm pretty good at getting stuff done. I'm pretty good hopefully mental health and recruitment speaks for itself. I get things done. And I think sometimes you want to help other people, you want to support other people, you want to do things for the right reasons. And I've been very guilty of putting my energy everywhere, and that's not good for me. So my biggest learn is that actually I'm allowed to say I can't do that, or I don't think I'm the right person to do that. And I'm allowed to say I won't be treated in that way, and these are my boundaries. So that's boundaries have been the big thing for me in the last year. And that's what I've learned. It's all right actually to put I mean, I think I'm pretty good at setting boundaries anyway. We talked about resilient characters by nature. I'm mentally very resilient, but I like to be I suppose in the thick of the things that we talk about. I like to the driving change, the creating things, pushing stuff out there, and it's really difficult to say no sometimes. That's been my biggest learn.
Well, I think there's a life hack. I have started saying no a lot more over recent years, and I think it's the most empowering word of them all. And I'm a huge advocate of anyone that's gone through that journey as well, like Rhonda, to find that actually saying no, politely, of course, you don't have to justify why you're saying no. It's really important that you do things that are important to you and that you can give all your energy to, because I think that's the truth, that the world that we live in now, you could, if you said yes to everything, you would just literally have no time for anything and do anything completely. So you are an absolute formidable force, Rhonda. And in terms of energy, you are one of the most positive people I've ever met. And I've met a lot of people over the last 23 years in recruitment. And you are just, on behalf of everybody that's listening to this, and on behalf of every recruitment professional, thank you for being the force behind the driving change, because you are making it totally normal to talk about this now, which is what we should all be doing. So for anyone who wants to get in touch with mental health and recruitment, follow the page on LinkedIn, get behind the pledge, but really do it meaningfully. Please don't do things half-heartedly. We want to create authentic change here so that we've got a legacy for the future generations. And is there anything you want to say before we finish, Rhonda?
Oh, Lysha, thank you so much, for your very kind, humbling words there, and for the support that you give mental health and recruitment. I know it's a cause very, very important to you, and thank you. I'm delighted that we met. COVID, I'm very grateful for some of the relationships and people COVID did bring into my life, actually, you being one of them.
Well, I feel the same about you. I think that all anybody can do over the last since March 2020 is look on the positive aspects of it, because otherwise it would just be far too don't make you far too downtrodden. But yeah, I agree. I think it's been wonderful getting to know you two, and I'm really so proud to be a champion. So thank you on behalf of everybody, and we look forward to seeing what happens next with mental health and recruitment. Thank you for joining us.